Okay, so there might be some noises. My sister's making lunch, and the big tree outside my window, it's kind of windy, so the big tree is kind of like scraping against the window. So there might be a few noises throughout this video. Sorry for that. Today I wanted to talk about Persephone, who is my patron goddess, and how I kind of started working with her, signs she sent me, and how I knew it was her, because I know a lot of people struggle with knowing who the deity is that's kind of reaching out to you. Alright, I repositioned the camera a little, so hopefully that's a little better. So I was kind of looking on Etsy, and I was originally going to start working with Artemis, and who's another Greek goddess, and so I was looking at kind of little mini statues of Artemis that I could put up for my Artemis altar, and I saw a Persephone one, and I kind of remembered that Persephone kind of existed, and I was looking into her myth a little more, and I started really liking her energy, and I could kind of feel her being there like, hey, I really want to work with you. So I was like, okay, I'll put aside Artemis for a little bit, and I do have Artemis up on my altar now, but I kind of put aside Artemis for a little bit, and I was like, okay, you're reaching out to me, so what do you want to tell me? And I kind of got my altar set up for her, and I remember watching Shadow Harvest, I think it was, her video about how she dedicated herself to Persephone. So after I kind of looked into her for a little bit, I lit a candle that had pomegranate in it because it was kind of the only one that I had, and I didn't have any Persephone specific ones at the time. I lit a candle and I put a few herbs in the bath because my mom has a ton of herbs, so I put in some flowers and some herbs, and I kind of just sat in the bath and I called in her energy, and I was like, okay, you're reaching out to me and I'm willing to work with you, and what do you want to tell me? So I didn't really get any specific messages that day. I kind of just felt her being there, like, with me, and it wasn't any specific, like, oh, I'm here to teach you something, but it was just her being there with me, and her energy felt very familiar. And I actually discovered later we have a lot of ghosts in our house, so they told us that Persephone was actually my spirit guide, or what I thought was my spirit guide. It made sense to me because her energy was very similar to the energy of this specific, what I thought was my spirit guide. And so I was kind of like, okay, so I felt your energy before, you're very familiar to me, what do you want to teach me? So she started kind of, kind of teaching me boundaries was one of the first things, just being able to set boundaries for myself. And I was doing therapy during that time that she started reaching out to me. I've done therapy a couple times, but I recently learned that I had ADHD, so I went to therapy for that, kind of like try and help it, and it really helped. And so once I got done with therapy, she was like, okay, well, now you should do some shadow work, and kind of just embrace the parts of you that you don't really like, and kind of whatever parts you want to change, you can change them, and everything is changeable, and do some more work on yourself. So I did start to do shadow work, and my mom also works with Persephone, not as often, but she does work with Persephone. So she had a few things that she let me use for my altar. She had like this pomegranate candle holder with this red candle in it, and so that she wasn't using, so she was like, oh, you can kind of use that for your altar. And there were a few other things that I ended up using, and I also bought stuff with my birthday money, which wasn't necessary, but I really like having my material stuff. I am a Taurus sun sign, so that's very important to me, having my like stuff. And I will do an altar tour probably this week. I'll release it, Sorry, that's the timer going off in the other room. And that'll kind of show you some of the stuff that I had and some of the stuff that I got. So I kept working with Persephone, and I just kind of felt really connected to her. And I also work with other deities. I did work with Freya for a bit, and I work with Hades. Persephone wanted me to start working with Hades. And I also work with Apollo and Artemis, and I recently started working with Hyacinthus, who isn't necessarily a deity. Lots of people see him as a hero, and so Persephone kind of was my main, like, goddess that I was working with. And so yeah, our connection kept kind of growing. So how to tell if it is her that's reaching out to you? She'll tell you. So I started kind of looking into her and her myths and stuff. Her symbolism kept popping up. I was seeing bats everywhere, and I just kind of like kept feeling her around me, and I was like, okay, so she's really trying to reach out to me. I think Shadow Harvest said that she literally had visions where Persephone like grabbed her. So that's very like distinct, and yeah. So she'll tell you, and her energy is very calming. She is kind of like a motherly energy, just very calming, very nice. She calls me Hun, so she's just like a very calming, nice energy to be working with. And yeah, so she'll be very calming. She won't be like chaotic or anything like that like some other deities are. She'll just be like calming. She'll be there. Yeah, sometimes I kind of like feel her hand on my shoulder almost, but not like physically, like just kind of like, oh, someone's touching me on the shoulder kind of thing. So some of her signs are pomegranates. Bats are one of her signs. I was getting a lot of just kind of like deep red colors showing up a lot. And my altar is very much like, her area is very much like deep red colors. Daffodils or narcissus, lily of the valley, some other poisonous plants. She really likes the poisonous plants. Yeah, and plants in general. If you don't have poisonous plants, you know, plants in general she really likes. Things I've given to her, when I first started, I gave her plants from outside, kind of just like dried plants that fell off, or I would give her flowers that fell off the plants that my mom is growing, or flowers that fell off the plants that I'm growing, and stuff like that. So I wasn't harming the plants in any way, just giving her like plant materials. I gave her rocks and crystals, and I've given her honey. She really likes that. I've given her dark chocolate. Yeah. Pomegranate oils or pomegranate scents. Floral scents too. She really likes that. And lavender is another major one. I have her candle dressed with lavender. So she's overall a very calming energy. When I'm having a tough time, I just kind of reach out to her, and she's there, and she's like, it's okay, you're gonna get through it, like, take the lessons you can out of this. And yeah, she's a great energy to work with. I would not recommend working with deities for beginners. I did a lot of research before working with any deities, and it really helped doing a lot of research, because at the start I was kind of drawn to Aphrodite as well, and Aphrodite does not work well with Persephone, so I'm glad that I did that research. And yeah, looking into the myths, seeing which version resonates with you. Different versions are going to resonate with different people. I personally like the one where Hades kind of came out of the underworld. She was looking at the narcissus flower. He came out of the underworld, and she like negotiated with him, and she was like, okay, I'll go down there, but what'll be my role, you know, kind of thing. I know some versions of the myth are he fully like kidnapped her, and that's okay too if you're resonating with that version of the myth. So everyone's gonna have a different version that they really resonate with, and you don't have to work with a specific deity. You don't have to work with a deity at all. I really love deity work. I'm very sensitive to energies, so I'll pick up on their energies all the time, just throughout the day. But it might not be for you, and that's okay. And just because someone is doing it doesn't mean you have to. So yeah, I am dedicated to her for 6 months, and I'm going to see kind of how that goes. I am just a teenager, so I didn't want to like, dedicate myself to one deity for life, because I know that life changes and there's different stuff that could happen, and yeah. So daily things that I do for her: I spend time out in our garden with the plants. I water my plants at least once a week. It depends on the plants. My cactuses in the window over here, they need to be watered a lot less than that, so I don't water them that often. So yeah, connecting with plants. I wear perfumes that she really likes. I wear kind of like this floral scent, and also this oil that someone made specifically for her. I kind of combine the two. They smell really good together. I will sit at my altar every day, and that's not everyone can do that. That's not necessary for everyone. I really like altar time. I really like spending time there, and I kind of just sit there and I meditate a little bit and tap in and connect with her and see if there's anything that she wants to tell me, and there will be sometimes. I keep my eyes peeled for any signs that might be happening, but then I also don't, see. She's also associated with butterflies, so every time I see a butterfly, I'm not like, oh, it's Persephone, also keeping in mind that it's not always, a sign is very important, because they're not always going to be sending you signs. I kind of just keep her in mind throughout the day, kind of when I'm doing stuff around the house, when I'm doing something that she might like, I'm just kind of like, here, I'm doing this for you, and stuff like that. Yeah, so it'll vary from person to person, but that's what I personally do. Also, shadow work, I try and do it at least once a week. If you're doing shadow work, please make sure to take care of yourself afterwards. That's very important, because you don't want to work yourself too hard, or if you struggle with mental health, you don't want to kind of make your struggles any worse. So there are some people who might not be able to do shadow work, and that's okay. But that's personally something that I do for her and keep her in mind when I'm doing that. Just kind of like working on the parts of me that I might not like as much, and also embracing the parts of me that I don't really want to share with the rest of the world. Lessons she has taught me. I know I talked about boundaries. That was one of the first ones. When I kind of started getting signs from her, it was right after I had left a friend who was a childhood friend who I had recently come in contact with, and there was just a lot of drama surrounding her, and I kind of left the situation. I said, I'm doing this for myself, and so more stuff like that started kind of happening. Just setting like basic boundaries for yourself and knowing your limits, and sometimes going past those limits, but then also being able to say a hard no when you're being pushed past your limits by someone else, because there's a big difference in you deciding to go outside of your comfort zone, outside of the box that you're kind of, your comfort zone box, your safe zone, or someone pushing you out of that zone. So, you want to make sure that you're ready to come out of that zone instead of someone else being like pushing you out. So that was one of the main things, was making sure that I was ready to, explore some parts of me that I don't necessarily think about. And kind of creating this YouTube channel and changing my Etsy was a big step for me, because I do worry about the judgment of others a lot. And so I had kind of kept the fact that I was a pagan and a witch to myself for a long time. And I didn't even tell my mom, who was also a pagan and a witch. And once I did tell her, I kind of started noticing more things popping up that was like, be yourself in this situation. Don't feel too self-conscious about the things that you like, because as long as they bring you joy, you're not going to be able to make everyone happy. So, you know, just kind of do what makes you happy, and yeah, stuff like that. So setting boundaries, self-care is another big one, just making sure that you're not pushing yourself too hard, and taking breaks is another big one, just breathing and being in the moment and appreciating what you have while you have. That's kind of it, and I hope you have a good day and stay safe.